Thank you all for joining us today for the 2025 In the City Juror Talk. Today you're joined by myself. I'm Amani Freeman. I'm the Exhibitions Manager for Maryland Federation of Art. Just a few words on the Maryland Federation of Art and what it is that we do. So MFA is a visual nonprofit organization that hosts more than 40 exhibitions every year. Our mission is to make connections in the local and online communities through art with exhibitions and events in Circle Gallery in Annapolis, Maryland, online and in numerous alternative venues. We provide artists of all genres, media, and backgrounds with the opportunity to exhibit works selected by professionally credentialed jurors and to be recognized with monetary awards. Artists do not have to be members to enter our exhibitions. However, members do have several advantages, such as lesser entry fees, access to networking, and additional exhibition opportunities. And if you're interested in learning more about becoming a member, please visit our membership page on our website by clicking the link below. A few words on the exhibition today. The exhibition was called In the City 2025, where we look at skylines, crosswalks, alleyways, and shops, bright lights, buses, taxis, and crowds. These are just a small list of elements that can create the essence of an urban environment. Some aspects of city life are universal and can represent any city, anywhere, from a large metropolis to a small town. Every city as well has unique symbols and iconic places that signify the identity of the community, such as restaurants, festivals, music halls, and graffiti. We welcomed all artists to submit original work that gave us a sense of their own urban experience. And today, we're lucky enough to be joined by our juror, Ms. Christina Gomez. Christina Gomez is a professor of liberal arts and graduate director of Visual and Critical Studies Department at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She is like I said, a professor of liberal arts and graduate director of visual and critical studies with a focus on sociological research related to racial identity, discrimination, and immigration. She is the author of numerous articles on topics such as skin color discrimination, Latino identity, bilingual education, and the experiences of undocumented students in higher education. Ms. Gomez has received multiple prestigious awards and fellowships, including the Henry Luce Foundation Scholars Fellowship and the Faculty of the Year Award from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 2019. At this point, I'll introduce Ms. Gomez to say some words in introduction.
Thank you so much, Amani, and thank you for all the help you gave me while doing this. I want to say that the Maryland Federation of Art is a really impressive organization, and I was so excited to be invited to join this exhibition. Serving as a juror for In the City 2025 is really a profound honor for me, and the submissions, of which there were many, revealed really an open window into urban life and to think about how we meditate on this, how we interrogate what it means to inhabit our cities. From the global metropolises to the more intimate urban spaces, these works really illuminate the complex nature of city life through deeply personal and poignant lenses. The submissions spanning diverse media, there was many different kinds, really transcended mere representation to capture the humanity of urban experiences. And all of the works really distinguish themselves through their ability to disrupt perspectives and creating moments of contemplation that really invited us to have a relationship with these urban spaces and with also the people, right? The individuals who dwell in these spaces and these places that we call home. So each piece speaks to different modes of city dwelling, from survival to resistance, from adaptation to flourishing, and the dialogue between people and place. They acknowledge both a city life in its shadows and its conflict, but also right in the joy that we experience in being in cities and urban spaces. The exhibition invites us to gain insight into the artist's really keen observations about their ability to translate the complexity of the urban experience and compelling, right, these narratives, really these stories that they're telling, which were just really beautiful to see. Their insights challenge us to mirror our thinking about cities, about the spaces where we might be living and their residents, and to also re-examine what we think about our cities. So first of all, I want to thank all the artists who submitted work. It was all incredible. It was very difficult for me to decide who the prizes would go to. All, the insight, the technical prowess, and the contributions to understanding contemporary urban life were really remarkable. And I hope people can come and visit either virtually or in person the various pieces that we see today because really they were all incredible. So thank you, Amani. So I'm just going to share, I think we're going to share some pieces today of both the honorable mentions and the jurors selections. And we're going to start with this one before the show. This was a photograph that I just really found joyful. I love this black and white piece with individuals both looking directly at the camera, but also clearly in this conversation and being in dialogue with each other. Um, it's a space that many of us see in our urban spaces kind of before the drag brunch that was happening. Perhaps people were gathering, but also about just the everyday people, the humanity, right? And how important that relationship that we have with each other in meeting and coming together in community matter. And I thought this photograph really captured that moment, right? Of of people and of conversation. So I thought this really deserved to be kind of shown to other people as well. So thank you for that, John. This piece was fun. This was it's called Tessie's School Portrait. And I liked it because it was really almost unlike any of the other pieces. It's this kind of cartoon painting, this acrylic on canvas where we see this individual. I'm not sure, are they an alien? There's someone from another planet who come down, right? Um, and they're just hanging with their gym shoes, their tracksuit, with this kind of graffiti piece in the background. It's a large piece. It's 48 by 30. And um, and it was just kind of fun. And when we think about the city, you know, the things that we encounter, and depending on where you live, sometimes things are just really different and it surprises us and we chuckle. And this piece I thought was a beautiful representation of that and of the differences that we all have and also, right, to some extent, the acceptance that for those of us who live in urban spaces, whether it's New York or Chicago or LA, these big spaces where we see all sorts of diversity. Um, and I thought it was a great representation of that. This one, in the city is what the city is watching you, right? It's a beautiful kind of painting acrylic on canvas with lots of different color, right? A lot of it's kind of this diversity and this movement that you see in this painting. And if you begin to look closely, they're all eyes, you know, the eyes that are watching you. It's a little bit kind of surveillance, right? Of course, which many of us are dealing with today with our phones, with our computers, with cameras all over the city. But it's also I thought something else about people watching us. We are watching them, the people that we encounter, the eyes that we see. I take a lot of public transportation and I'm situated here in Chicago. And I think of all the eyes that I see and that see me. And so again, this kind of was a reminder of the community that we live in, but also, right, how this sense of seeing is for many of us, right, present in how we walk through the space that we're in. But also there's a feeling here that is both playful, but a little bit ominous as well. So I thought it struck a nice balance, and I thought the colors were quite beautiful. Gum wall. This was one of the jurors' choices that I made. When I first saw this, it took me just a few seconds to think, oh, it's gum, right? And part of me think gross, but it is a beautiful piece. The movement, right, that you see in this digital photograph, the color, and for those of us who've been in spaces, I think in Seattle, Washington, there's a wall in San Obispo, California, and I think there's also one in New York where you see spaces like this, right? Where people together have joined and decided, like it starts small and then it starts to grow. I think the big one in Seattle, they've tried to take down now that's just up and it's a huge space, but it's a reminder of the many people we live with, right? And again, the question of diversity, but also this interesting kind of artistic process that this whole everyone who's put a piece of gum there um, partakes in. And I just thought it was a nice reminder again of places that we've seen, places where we lived, and a reminder that we live in these large spaces with many hundreds of thousands of people. And sometimes these little pieces of art, right, pop up in unexpected ways. And so again, I thought this was a beautiful piece. It was playful, it was fun, and just also the movement of the color and the kind of the gum placement was super cool. Build Baby Build. This was an interesting piece that looks it looks at kind of the maps of architecture, of structure, kind of gives you a different view of cities. As some of the pieces that we saw earlier are very close up, this one really is kind of a bird's eye view, almost from above, and the mapping of the city. And I thought it was lovely how they kind of collage these different pieces that they found, things that look like maps, structures that look like buildings, these kind of blocks that they put together. The color I thought was really sharp and really stuck out. Um, but I thought it was just it made me stop and think of when we think of cities, the various ways that we can look at cities, both uniquely, kind of in a very narrow view and very close up, but also when we pull away, what do we see? And this kind of assemblage I thought was just really creative and gave me pause to think about spaces that I've been in and cities and the bottom half rivers and placement of buildings. So I thought this Build Baby Build 2.0 was really an interesting view of what it means to live in a city. Shadow play. This is a graphic drawn directly on this clay board. And when you first looked at it, I actually thought it was a photograph. It's beautifully done, right? And it's this capturing this wall, right? This brick building. And you have this beautiful play of shadow and light with the sun, what appears to be the sun streaming down. And you see the shadows of perhaps what we think is a tree, right? The shadow of the tree, the leaves, the branches, but also the shadow of the staircases there, the fire escapes. It is really a beautiful piece of oftentimes I find that when I walk in cities, there are buildings that I've passed hundreds of times and suddenly that building, right, really, you think, have I seen this before? And part of it, it's, the time of day, the light that hits a building. I think the juxtaposition between the sunlight, the shadow, the brick of the building, these windows was really beautifully done. The technique was really incredible. And again, right, just a reminder of how when we traverse through a city, the various things that we see, not only in terms of people, but also structures and the architecture. And in this case, also the play of light, in this case, sunlight on different structures. And I think it captured that. And so for the theme in the city, um, I thought it was an interesting piece to really kind of um, to have us think in yet another perspective on how we think about this. Aftermath, number two. This piece is a mixed media collage on canvas. Um, this artist had done several of these. This is a hard piece, right? Because this could be a photograph, a picture of a city that's been at war, a city that's had to deal with environmental crisis and disaster. Um, and we've seen what these cities look like often, in newspapers, some of us ourselves have survived spaces like this. Um, and yet, right, it's a city, and it's a city that some of us have seen, have lived in. And I think it beautifully captured, very sadly, like what that could look like. And I also thought the framing of this photograph, right, with the various colors and these kind of pieces that are much more abstract, also really heightens the disaster that we see there and what that looks like. Um, Many of us know this is happening today as we're living, and this is happening globally in many spaces. Um, and so I thought this series of photos, this is aftermath number two, really, it was important to highlight and to really show the work that's being done and how well they capture that. Mm. Torn Town. Again, this piece is kind of playful. It's a mixed media piece, kind of crayon and images and photographs. It gave me a sense of the film Rear Window, right? When we look and we don't know what's happening. And in each of these windows, right, that's kind of abstract and kind of put together, we see different images, whether it's someone looking back at us, whether it's a flower, a Campbell soup can. And it just does, again, right? It's a fun, playful piece on being in a city of kind of looking into people's homes. What do we see? What do we see in our neighbors' windows? Who's looking back at us? And again, just another reminder of both. This does a nice job of really mixing not only structures in cities, but also um, how people and things inhabit. And I thought it was very interesting how they played with perspective. with this house or this apartment building, and then the background, right, of these clouds and this crayon marking that again gave movement, right, to where this is, but also just kind of made me think about the many spaces that I've been in, many apartments that I've lived in over my life, and who looks in, who looks out, what we have, and yet we're all part of this community, part of the city. Um, and it was just, I thought, very, very nicely done.
Okay, thank you so much for your insight, Ms. Gomez. You can tell that you really took your time with the works, and it was very thoughtful in your selection process, so we really do appreciate that. Right now, we're just looking at an overview of all the awards, and we invite everyone to please visit our website, where you'll find a list of the award winners. You'll be able to look at their work in more detail and depth, and some of them even have artist statements, which you'll read to even add another layer of insight to the piece you're looking at. This is a collage of the show. It's not all the works that were featured in the show, but it is just a pretty good overview of some of the work that we received. Even though they didn't win awards, we're still very appreciative of all the work that was submitted. And in closing, I actually have a question for you, Ms. Gomez. When you were going over the works, from selection just to the general show to your awards, did you see any themes that were reoccurring? Of course, we know in the city is the, overarching theme, but were there any like categories or subcategories that kept on popping up to you when you were going through?
Yeah, there were. And I think it's good for our audience to know there were over 350 submissions. So there was a lot of work. It was all really incredible. I think that thematically some of the pieces were specifically on structures. There was kind of these architectural, structural, whether photographs or paintings, that really, when we think about cities, that's often something that comes up, right? The building of cities. Um, Both historically, and we had some beautiful pictures, not only from the United States, but globally about these structures, both in their building, but also in their decay, um, which were really stunning to see. So I really do urge people to look at all the submissions. So there was that. In addition, there were, of course, people, like people who live in cities, the people that we see as we walk through. There was a beautiful photograph of somebody walking in one of the photos that I remember quite well, right? And so there's kind of us as sentient beings, not only humans, but also other animals, which again, a reminder of being in the city, of traversing the city, of exploring cities. And then there was just objects. You saw one here in the kind of the collage of a cigarette case, like on the floor, um, of something that someone lost or that somebody found, right? Very specifically. And so you have those different pieces, and then some that bring it all together. And so it varies. There's a few landscape kind of photos, more parks and trees, right? Kind of the environment that we live in. But I would say the majority were kind of structures, people, and then very specific objects that were done in close up. Um, and and again, whether it was photographs or mixed media or specifically paintings, right? We saw a diverse range of artistic practice. I think there was only one sculptural piece, right? That would have been, I think, interesting to see more of. We didn't have a lot of sculptural pieces, but again, they were all really quite stunning. And I think what really stood out for me was the perspective that people offered, and and as an observer, allowed us to really reflect on that and to reflect on our own experience living in cities.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you answering in that way because it kind of it tied it together one of my thoughts, on you said the diversity of the work, on the subject matter, how it was structured, to maybe spaces, to people, right? And I think that the last three jurors' choices really encapsulated that really well.
Mhm.
It was kind of like the top-down view of the city with like it looked like the rivers and the road systems, and then torn apart, which was like people, objects, which was open to interpretation, and then aftermath, which was like a very clear-cut determination of like, okay, this is what we're looking at. Of course, everyone's perspective is different, like you mentioned, but it's just interesting the range by which people, had their experiences in these urban spaces and how they decided to portray them artistically, whether it be mixed media, whether it be, like you said, assemblage, charcoal, which looks like a photograph. It's just,
Right.
I think the range of work in this show is really well, and I think that you did a really good job representing a lot of different perspectives and takes on people's urban experiences. So we really do appreciate you for that. And on behalf of the Maryland Federation of Art and myself, I do want to just extend another thank you so much for all the work you've done, from the beginning of the selection process to now. I know it's not easy. I don't envy your job, but you did a really good job of it, and I'm very appreciative of that. At this point, if you just want to say anything, now's the time.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Amani. You were wonderful to work with. You answered my all my questions very quickly. Um, and I'm just, again, I want to thank all the artists. It was really, I felt really honored to look at your work. And I hope that you continue with your artistic work, all the artists, that you continue your practice. Um, in this time that we're living in today, I think artwork is still a refuge for so many of us to go to and to spend time contemplating and reflecting. And I think it's important that we continue to honor our artists and make sure that we remember and center them in the works that we do. So I just want to say thank you to all of them, and that it was a very tricky decision. And for the audience, please come see the show. I think it's up to the end of March. It'll be up on your website. It's a terrific show. And also, the Maryland Federation of Art does an amazing job. I'm so glad that you exist and have this opportunity for artists to submit their work and for us as the audience to view it. I've been combing your website quite a bit now, and it's been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, like you mentioned, and I forgot to mention before, we are very appreciative of all the artists that took the time, effort, money, just anything out of their day to even decide to work with us. Um, and we hope that, it's a relationship that continues, and not only the artists, but we hope that in another capacity, we do have terms that we can't not contact, but work with jurors within certain times. But hopefully, in the future, you can work with us in another capacity. And if you're in Maryland, I hope you can stop by and pay us a visit in person.
I would love to, definitely.
Nice. Well, this concludes our video for today, guys. We invite that you check out our YouTube channel. We upload things as far as reception videos to installation videos. Paint Annapolis is coming up, so we'll be covering that. And of course, things like these, virtual receptions, juror talks, the whole works. So we do invite you to check out our YouTube, and thank you so much for joining us today.